Please listen carefully.
Hi, I'm Paul Frields.
And I'm Dave Guzman.
And welcome to Practical Bass, where each week we find a topic of interest to you, the working bass player, and we sort of take it apart and look at it from a lot of different directions and hopefully impart some wisdom and also invite you, the listeners, to come back at us with some feedback, right? Come back at us with your take on that topic. You can give us feedback in a lot of different ways. One of them is to visit our website at practicalbass.com, where we have a feedback form. You can also just contact us by email straight up at podcast@practicalbass.com. But you can also find us on the social networks, right? You find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter and Google+, even Instagram. So if you'd like to send us a picture of you being angry or happy at whatever we've said, even that would be acceptable. And you can of course hashtag us at Practical Bass as well on any of those networks. And we really look forward to hearing from you. That conversation is important to me and Dave. We read everything that we get, and we do listen to you carefully for topics that you're interested in. That has already propelled several of our episodes, and we hope that we'll be able to do several more like that. So please send us some listener mail, and let's start gabbing. Speaking of gabbing, Dave, what are we going to gab about?
Oh, today we're gabbing about money.
Money.
You got it, baby.
Money.
We're going to talk about how we deal with that money conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How we approach it professionally and how we get into that discussion, you know, when we're talking about the gigging process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all in this when we say, you know, working bass players, hopefully like you guys are working for money, right? Not for free most of the time. So at least most of the time, if not all of it.
Right.
Dave, so when did you make that transition? When did you get paid for your first gig?
Wait, so I can actually get paid for playing bass?
Yes. Yes, you can, Dave.
Well, I had
it is
no
a skill.
I had no idea.
I had no idea.
They were telling me I'm the bass player.
It is not just abuse and bad musician jokes. You actually can get paid as well.
Right.
You need not receive only abuse. You may also receive dollars.
Yeah. Oh, no, my first my first paying gig was it was big time. It was like 25
smackers.
Yeah. It was a big band. It was like 10 people. We were playing bluegrass at like a student union at a school that I didn't even go to.
Yeah. So it might have been a good paycheck if it was a power trio, but like for a first gig, but not with 10 people.
Not with 10 people. Yeah. It also wasn't really a great performance. We probably didn't deserve the 25 each, but
don't be harsh. Come on. I'm sure you were awesome. For a first gig. It was a first gig.
You know.
Everybody's got to have a first gig.
Just thank goodness, you know, iPhones and video and YouTube were not invented then. It didn't happen, except for this podcast. Now it happened.
Now it's a real thing again.
I just turned it into eternity.
Yeah, you've captured it. We have memorialized your first gig now.
Well, it was amazing anyways, just for the record.
Okay.
Yeah, it was incredible. We'll end it
Best
there.
Gig ever.
Best gig ever. Yeah, sorry that you missed that one.
So huge.
Back in 2002. Woo, it was a biggie.
Yeah.
How about you, Paul? What was your first big paying gig?
Yeah, so I think I don't. It wasn't very much either. I think I was maybe the recipient of like $40.
Nice.
And some beer at my first paid gig was it was when I was in college as a fraternity party, and we did have a 5-piece band.
Yeah,
so it wasn't a 10-piece, so like easier to orchestrate and didn't have to split up the money quite as many ways.
Right.
So yeah, $40 and some beer, and it was interesting. We were a college cover band.
So wait, so the fraternity gave you free beer?
Yes, they did.
Wow. All
right.
They
did.
It was like a throw-in.
Yeah. So the topic of pay, like we knew, I don't know about your first gig. We knew what we were going to get paid at our first gig. So, I mean, it was definitely settled. We had a specific amount that we negotiated, and it wasn't a hard negotiation. We got what we wanted.
Right.
How do you deal with that topic though, when you get a call for a gig? Like some gigs with bands, it's easy. Like you got a contract, you have a pre-decided rate or something like that. But how do you deal with that topic when somebody calls you about a gig?
So if they don't come right out with what the compensation is, I guess like off the top, I don't commit to the gig unless if I know how much I'm getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Right. Like as as kind of cold as that sounds, for me, like, I guess I was given some advice years ago that like you're either doing it for the fun or you're doing it for the money.
Right.
And when you're not having fun and you're not making money, then like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Why are you here? Right.
Like there are other things that you could be doing in your life. And it can involve music, right? Like you could be spending that time working on your chops.
Yeah.
That might be more valuable.
Yep.
You
could be at home writing, recording, who knows?
Right. I mean, I do play some gigs that are low or free paying gigs, if I want to be there, if it's part of that like fun category.
Yeah.
But I try to be upfront with what the topic of money is always a little bit hairy, but I try to be upfront with it.
Yeah.
With what my expectations are. At the end of the day, it's a trade.
Yep.
And I try to be honest, when I approach that, that conversation around, time with the family, time with myself versus like, the pay piece of it. So
like you're trading it off is what you're saying. Like that time is time that you could be spending with your family or doing other things. And so that time is really it has a value.
Exactly.
Put on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with with this topic?
Yeah. I mean, I do definitely think about it the same way. I mean, I feel like we're going to preach to the choir a little bit in this episode maybe, but as the listeners are hearing us, I mean, some of them are probably going to nod their heads in agreement. I mean, there are other people that I know who they will take any opportunity to play in front of people no matter what. And I think that is a really dangerous and low bar to set for yourself.
Right.
Because basically what you're telling people is that I will take anything means basically I don't put any value on what I provide. Right. Now, I definitely think people should set that value based on, being honest with themselves and listening honestly and openly to what other people express to them or the feedback they get. Like if you play a lot and you can't get anybody to come to your gigs, you're getting, that is feedback, right? Of a sort, right?
Sure.
That is feedback. And if you're not listening to it, then you're kind of putting your hands over your eyes and ears and kind of ignoring that.
That's right.
And on the other hand, if you are playing gigs and constantly people are showing up, you get huge response, lots of people telling you, but yet you're not asking for pay or you're getting very little pay. That is also an issue, right? And you should address that as well.
Right.
So yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that value idea because I just think, you said something that was so powerful this is a trade-off between my family or, the other things that I want to do that I really love and this other thing, which I may also really love, but, if I'm there not out of a sense of just sheer enjoyment, then, it comes with a price.
Right.
So yeah, so sometimes like I will get calls where people are like, the first thing that they say is, what are you doing on such and such a night?
Right. The setup.
That is absolutely, if I could erase a sentence from every musician or band leader or whoever's vocabulary, that would be it.
Right.
Because it implies that if I am not already engaged in a gig, nothing else that I could be doing would be as good as whatever is being offered.
Right.
That better be a really, really good offer on the other side. Like,
Right.
So there's this gig, like there's a gig at the Hamilton in DC, like, which is this really famous hotel. And there's like a beautiful stage there and stuff. Yeah. You're going to be playing a private party for the King of Jordan, and you're going to be taking home 5 figures that night. Like,
Right.
complete pipe dream. Right. If something like that is not on the other end of that sentence, then this is a silly way to start that conversation. What are you doing that night? Well, what business is it of yours what I'm doing?
Do you want to hang out? Is that what we're doing?
Right. Yeah. Do you want to go get a beer?
Yeah.
Have dinner?
That's right.
Because that could be great. That could be awesome.
Right.
Right. So that I can't stand getting that kind of call. I mean, I like getting the call. I love getting the call. Don't get me wrong. Like, getting the call is a wonderful experience. I'm grateful anytime somebody calls, but I also feel like what I want to hear is, hey, are you doing gigs with are you doing gigs with people? Like, are you in a position where you can take a gig? I've got this date, this time. It's this kind of, it's a casual, we're going to be doing like standards, whatever. Or we're going to be doing like top 40 or, whatnot. It's this long, and it pays X amount of money. Right. And here's where it is. Right. And like, give all the details. There's nothing to hide. Right. Yeah.
Because when you get that message, and it depends on where it's coming from, but if you get, a musician that's saying, hey, are you available? Are you available on this date? Do you have anything going on this date? You have to already start in with like some padding, some white lie, just to give yourself padding, so you don't end up in that position where you're telling him, no, it's not enough money. So you have to like already start out like, I don't know, I'm not sure, maybe.
I love the voice.
I got a thing that I'm doing, but I don't know. Why? More details.
Why do you ask, sir?
Need information.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, this is a specific, now having the freedom to do that, in saying this, I think it's important to recognize that I got a day job in addition to playing bass. And that puts me in a situation where I can say no to some gigs. There are plenty of bass players working at a pace or at a frequency beyond what I'm doing that can't and don't afford to turn those gigs down. Right.
Totally different.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If it's paying, I'm playing. Right. And I have absolute respect for that. So in saying this, like, I am not ignoring the fact that there are people out there who you take anything that is paying well.
Right. There's an asterisk to this whole thing that if it's your sole source of income, then when you do look at like, Tuesday at 8 p.m., I'm available.
Yeah.
It's a different story.
Yeah.
Right.
And I guess my take on it is do I put myself in the category of, some of the amazing musicians that I've heard out there and people that I know are making their living on bass? No, I do not. Not as good as some of them. But I really, really try all the time to get to that level and operate at that level. Right. And so from my perspective, if I get a call, I do want to know the details the same as I would if I was working at that level. And if a guy was doing that and he's making his living on it, he has a certain value as a player, whether he's making his living, his mortgage or whatever, his rent off playing bass or not, his skill has a value that is ascribed to it.
Right.
And I feel like, well, so does mine. So I don't want to be treated a lot differently than that guy. I want to know like what the details are.
Sure.
And not to be like, I don't want to have a swelled head about it. I know, that I'm somewhere in this like middle category of players out there, but it just comes down to, I want to know that you're putting a value on having me there. Right. And it's not just, if I'm free, I'm obviously going to come play with you because that is such a blessing. Right. It just seems very egotistical from that side.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I would like to think that, I make the right kind of offer to other players. Like I recently brought in a guy who is a well-known guitar player around these parts, a really good player. And I didn't come to him saying, hey, are you free such and such a night? What I said was, hey, I need a guitar player on this date for a gig at this point. Here's what they pay, and here's what you'd have to do. What do you think?
Right.
I would consider that a respectful way to approach a musician.
Yeah.
Whose time I value.
Right. So
anyway, that was, I feel bad because I kind of like monologued there for a bit on that because I just feel so strongly about this. But so all this talk about caring about pay, I mean, I guess we could come off like the biggest jerks here. Like we could come off like really mercenary.
Right.
Like all we care about is the money. Like how does caring about pay make you look as a musician? Like, or as a person? I mean, how do you think about that? Like, how do you reflect that back to the world?
Yeah. I mean, I hope that what I in those conversations, what I'm putting out is that like ultimately it is a trade, right? Like it's years put in to certain skill set that you're putting out. They're going to get a product. They know if they're asking you, they know what they're going to get out.
When you say it's a trade, you're not talking about like trading pay for time. You mean like it's a trade, like a craft, like a craftsman's trade.
Right. Like as if, look, if you've got, if you hire a carpenter with 20, 25 years experience, right? Like they're going to ask for a certain amount of money for work done, but what you're getting in return is you're getting the experience. You're getting someone who, hopefully is going to like show up on time, someone who's going to get the job done. They're going to finish it, and it's going to be a certain quality of work, and they're going to demand, X dollars per hour or whatever that project looks like. So while it may come off as somewhat like cold-hearted, there is that, there's that value that I bring.
Yeah. I mean, and that value is, that's what people are exchanging the money for. The fact that you're going to come and make their gig go well. Like that's their expectation. And I think that, that's why you and I, we really concentrate in this podcast about talking about ways to do that, right? To bring that level of skill. You know how your gear works. You know how to behave during a show. You know what your responsibilities are. You know how to be organized and how to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because that raises your value.
And this is a little bit like, this is kind of a somewhat off topic, but, I play with some musicians that will say, look, we're getting paid X dollars, like on average for these, like, kind of like bar type gigs. We were getting this back in the 80s and 90s, and the pay scale hasn't changed.
Yeah.
I don't mean to like kind of preach on this podcast, but I think it's because...
No, preach it, brother.
We as musicians, we often will just say yes before we know what that pay is.
Yeah.
Right? And the people that are paying that, they know that.
Yeah.
They know that it's a certain night. They know who, what musicians are out there, and they know they can offer a certain amount and that they're going to say yes.
Right. And that is a terrible position to be in as a negotiator or as a business person. Right?
That's right.
I will take whatever you give me is a terrible way to start a negotiation.
Right.
So has the issue of pay, like, has that ever separated you from a gig in some way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, those situations in general where you're asked to be a sub for like a one-time situation.
Right.
And you've got to learn 20 songs.
Yeah.
And you calculate all the hours in, right?
Yeah.
That it's going to take to learn those 20 songs if you want to make sure that you're keeping up your reputation.
Right.
And then you add in the travel time and the load in time and the gig time and the load out time and then the travel time again. And you kind of pair that all up and you put it dollars to hours. There's been times where I've had to say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think maybe it came off wrong, but it came down to pay.
Yeah.
But because I'm looking at it like I'm never gonna, it's those situations where you're never gonna play again in that specific group, and all of a sudden, you've basically spent, X number of hours, and if you average it out, it's like $3 to $5 an hour that you're getting paid. And, so I've certainly had to say no. And I think, I don't think that I've burned any bridges over that, but I'm honest about it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
up
absolutely.
front, and I will tell somebody, because I think honesty is best.
Yeah,
know?
you're putting a lot of, if you're fronting a lot of work into something that doesn't really have, like, it's not the beginning of a relationship
Right.
that brings more gigs. And there are ways to judge that, right? Like sometimes that like when somebody's making an offer like that, it is going to probably turn into more stuff, or
Right.
you can at least, the possibility is there and it's enough that you're willing to invest.
Right.
So, okay, maybe I'll do this because it's going to turn into more of a relationship down the road.
Right.
But without a very strong feeling of that, you're really like, you're doing basically all of the work up front for that gig.
Right.
And that costs, right? And so,
Yep.
ending up the point where you're getting paid like $3 an hour or $4 an hour
Right.
for all the time that you put into a gig that's a pretty bad space to be in.
Yeah.
And I think the ways to prevent that, I mean, there are a few ways, right? One of them is to just like basically constantly be increasing your repertoire. So you end up putting less and less time in on the front end.
Right.
Right. But there's a limit to that, right? Like you can't know every song. You can't know every song in every genre.
Right.
Right. There are guys who maximize their ability to do that and minimize their investment. They minimize their like the sunk cost.
Yeah.
By knowing the Billboard Hot 100 at any time, right?
Right.
That guy knows all 100 of those songs and can walk in and basically do any top 40 gig cold, right? Just know the key and go, right? That's a way to like offset that investment. But on the other hand, if you're in a market where people aren't doing a lot of that type of music,
Yep.
right? Then it becomes like, well, what does that catalog look like that you should know?
Right.
Right. But again, the point being that only helps you with that area of gigs, right? And then somebody calls you for a completely different genre. And now it's like,
Right.
now you really have to invest again.
Yeah.
Right. And what does that look like? Are there gigs that you'll do for free?
Yeah. I'll definitely do some free gigs. I mean, it's a short list, but
I literally sound like I'm about to,
Right.
Hey Dave, by the way, what are you doing next Friday night?
this is a setup. This is the biggest setup that ever happened on a bass podcast. Yeah, I'll do free gigs if it's somebody that's close to me that's asking as a favor, and I have it in the room. I have the room in my schedule.
Yeah.
I'll also do it for benefits that I feel close to.
Yeah.
Right. There's some attachment.
Yeah.
Also, like if I'm in a band that's playing regularly, we all kind of have that one throw in, like, hey guys, we're going to do this one benefit show because this is the one that I'm calling this.
Right.
So we may do 4 bandmates. We may all just have like one we get to throw in a year.
Yeah.
Right. And the whole line of like, yeah, it's for exposure. You just have to know it's not.
Yeah.
It just never turns out that way. Maybe you get a gig out of it. Really, it's just because you're just doing the free gig.
The exposure lie is probably the biggest one
Right.
that ever happens, and everyone should know it if they don't already. That I've heard people say this a million ways, and one of the funny ones was, I'm throwing this party at my house for like 120 friends,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a really good chef at a local restaurant. I know that if you come to my house and you cook, just cook for free, you're going to get a lot of exposure. Like those people are all going to come to your restaurant and pay for your food. Like it is the stupidest idea ever.
Right.
And the idea that musicians keep falling for it is just ridiculous.
Right.
But in short, I mean, I think I agree with you about the free gigs. Like it needs to be a benefit that I believe in, if it's a cause that I believe in, or it's really important to the group I'm playing with. If it's a favor for somebody that I really care about, and it's not happening all the time. Like there's a reason for it, and it's a good reason. I have had occasions where I have come in and done a free gig with the certainty that I was going to get another gig out of it. Like it was
Right.
literally with, come and do this. Like if you agree to this, I am going to book you 2 more paid gigs right now.
Right.
Right. Say yes and get those dates.
Right.
Right. And get the contracts, et cetera, et cetera.
Totally.
All that sewed up. Great. I'm there. Like I absolutely, we can agree on that. Send me the contract for that gig, for those 2
Right.
gigs. Signed out. Boom, boom. We're done. It's in the can. Right?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
that makes sense to me.
It does. It does. And you know, but I also do like the look, like I have a project right now that I play out with and I never get paid.
Yeah.
Right. But I like it. Like it's fun.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing for me is just like either fun or money.
Yeah.
And so if it is fun, like, you know, I'm in it.
This is the one that I saw the other night.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But you don't do that very often either.
No.
Like that's not, we're not talking about like you're doing that twice a month, you're not getting paid. That's
No.
like once in a blue moon.
Right. When our schedules all line up that we're available.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm there. And because that's the art, right? Like that's for me, that's the fun, that's the art, that's like a learning process. I have to put time into it, but it's, you know, it's fun.
Yeah. You really do that for a very specific reason and it
Right.
doesn't happen often. And it certainly isn't like,
Right.
you know, people aren't like, oh yeah, Dave plays for free. So
Right.
if anybody's listening to this from our local region, just be assured Dave does not play for free. So
I play for food. Let's be straight.
that's one way to do it. I guess that food would have to be really good, but yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Was there a time for you when you changed from not caring about being paid to actually caring, like when it became an issue for you?
Yeah. When so I did that first paying gig in college and that was only, you know, that was after my first year
Right.
learning bass. I was, you know, playing for pay. And I think I realized I could, you know, play for pay and I did get paid from that point on pretty much all the time.
Right.
But I think the difference was that at a certain point, and I think maybe this was after I got out of college, and for a couple years I worked around, you know, just worked in DC, and I just had a job and I was doing the job grind. And I think this would have been around 1994. So like 4 years or so after that first college gig, I got an offer from somebody to play with them. And that started my thinking, oh, these guys do this as a business. Like they came and recruited me for this band. And they were pretty successful. It was a good band.
Right.
And they recruited me because they heard of me through a friend of a friend or whatever. And they got paid for their gigs. And it was good. It was, you know, good money. They
Right.
were essentially a band that really played only on weekends because they could always get a Friday or a Saturday night anywhere.
Right.
Because they were, you know, they really entertained a lot of people and had them buying a lot of drinks. So that makes them very popular. So
Sure.
it was easy to get gigs and the gigs paid well. So once I was in that band, I think I kind of, you know, picked up from the bandmates there they were all like, you know, 7, 8, 10 years older than me, that, you know, pay was not something to be embarrassed about. And that the only good reason to do a gig in most cases was because it was paying well, because it meant that people were, you know, putting a value on your time.
Yeah.
And so I realized that was a completely legitimate way of looking at it. Cause these guys were all like, they all came from different walks of life.
Yep.
All of us did. And that was one thing that these guys really understood and passed on to me. Like they kind of built that into my thinking that, you know, if we are not getting paid, there better be a really, really damn good reason for that.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there was a point where I went from not caring about it to caring about it. I think it was more, at a certain point, I was made to understand that was not, you shouldn't feel guilty about wanting to be paid for your work.
Right.
There's no difference between that and any other labor that you're doing, right? You don't go to your 9 to 5 And then when your boss says, hey, we didn't sell enough drinks, so, no paycheck for you or whatever. It's
Right.
like, I mean, yes,
Right.
I know there are places where they're like, yeah, sales weren't good or
Right.
the company is struggling or whatever. It's a small startup. I know those things happen, but in general,
Right.
right, you go to work and you get paid.
Right.
Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah. What about you?
Yeah, so I think it just kind of came at a point where my schedule was busy.
Yeah.
Right? Like when it started to get to the point where, if I was booking a gig, I had to really look at my calendar and see if there were spots open, and sort of juggling like family and work and then music. At that point, then it just felt like, you know what? Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about like whether I get paid or not. It was more about like, how much am I going to get paid and how much time am I going to have to put into this?
Yeah.
And that just felt natural. It never like was like a hard line for me. But money is, it's a difficult conversation sometimes, and it's a difficult topic because we are kind of thought to think, that it's almost like a taboo topic, and that, that makes it difficult. On one end, like if you're, like we're talking about how you discuss pay when almost as if like you're a sub, or for, if there's a band leader that's asking you to do a gig for a certain amount. But on the other side of it, there's times, and I'm fairly certain that you've been here, but there are times where you are the one booking the gig, right? And you're not talking about, someone asking, another bandmate saying, hey, would you want to play with us? Are you available? But you're actually talking to whatever, like the venue manager, whoever's like whoever the booking person is, and dealing with the conversation from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Right. So is that something that you experience on your end?
Yeah. So I have dealt with venue owners and stuff as, part of running my own band. That definitely is part of it. Like, and there's a whole other level then to thinking about not just what is the value, what is my value as a bass player? It's like, what is the value of this whole group?
Right.
And I have to think about what are the people's requirements for this act that I am bringing together, whether it's, my band or, something that's a one-time thing. Like, what does everybody need? How do I make sure I'm satisfying all of those requirements? I also have to be able to package that up and, sell that to the venue owner and say, look, here's what we're looking for. And I've priced out of gigs that way sometimes. Like I've gone to them and said, here's what we have to make. And they're like, well, we can only give you half that. And I'll tell them, well, I'm sorry, we're professional musicians.
Yeah.
And so, we don't work for that kind of, work for that kind of pay. Not quite in that way, but like,
sure,
I have to kind of beat around the bush a little bit because I don't want to sever the relationship, because there's a chance I might be able to pull that out of the fire. But essentially, I have to tell them, if you want professional musicians, like if this band is great and if you want it, you need to be able to pay for it. And if you can't, you probably want another act. We're probably not the right band for this place.
Right.
And that's a sad way to end a conversation sometimes, but I've had it many times at this point.
Yeah. Or I'll tell a venue owner, you know what? If you have like a bigger event, something like an anniversary event that you're trying to like boost up,
you should,
and the budget's a little bit bigger, like definitely let us know we're there. Like there's a way to put a positive spin on it.
Yeah.
And I think like for me at the end of the day, it's a bigger topic, and we won't go down the rabbit hole, but it is definitely like an extension of how you value yourself with money, right?
Right.
And it comes down to like the communication. Being as upfront as you can about it, knowing like what your bandmates, what their line is, right? Like having those conversations, kind of getting an idea as to what their price point is, knowing what your price point is.
Yep.
And communicating with, because a lot of times if you are with whoever's booking you for that venue, you might only have that time to talk.
That's right.
If you're talking with someone, you got to either close it, close the deal, or walk and let them know, like, these are what our expectations are. Let's table it for another time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But it does come down to communication, and it's okay to talk about money.
That is, if you out there in the listening audience, if you leave with one thing from this podcast, I think you just hit it on the head, Dave. It's all about communication and being clear, right? Be clear. You have to be clear with yourself.
Right.
You have to be able to be clear with your bandmates, and you have to be able to be clear with venue owners or other people who are in the pay cycle in some way. Right. And when you can do that, you're going to find that you have a much clearer relationship with how you care about playing bass.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
What a great place to stop. So I hope that you guys in the audience and Dave along with me, we hope that you guys have enjoyed this conversation a bit and maybe took something out of it. We would love to hear if you guys have a different take on any of this, or whether it's hey, +1, yeah, absolutely, I agree, or if there's something that you thought is way off the deep end, let us know. One way to do that, just email us, podcast@practicalbass.com. Go visit our website at practicalbass.com. There's a feedback form there. Use it. Let us know what you think. Visit us on Facebook. We have a page there, it's Practical Bass. You can also find us on the other socials, Twitter, Google+, even Instagram. Send us a picture of, I don't know, make a prune face and tell us that you didn't agree with us, or big smile. I don't know, anything. Like, we love to hear from you guys. We get all sorts of letters and comments from people, and we're looking for yours too. We want this to be a dialogue, not just us kind of spitting wisdom into the mic, as it were. The best thing that you can do, though, if you are enjoying this podcast, if you want to see it continue, we would love you to subscribe. Visit our website at practicalbass.com. There's a subscribe link that will tell you everything you need to do. It's basically this easy. If you have an iPhone, go to your podcasts app. If you have an Android phone, go to Google Play Music. Use an app on your computer, iTunes if you've got a Mac, Stitcher Radio, Player.fm, all sorts of places out there. Search for the Practical Bass podcast. Practical Bass. That's all you got to type in. You'll get our friendly black and white logo and hit that subscribe link. That's going to provide a new episode straight into your system, into your phone, into your mobile device every week without you lifting a finger. You don't have to do anything from that point. And of course, the best part is it's free. We don't charge for any of this. This is just our little way of giving back to the bass community. So we hope you enjoy it, and we hope you'll subscribe. And until next time and our next exciting topic, I'm Paul Frields.
And I'm Dave Guzman.
This has been Practical Bass.
Thanks for listening.
We're sponsored by, who are we sponsored by tonight? We're sponsored by Sierra Nevada.
Hello, Sierra.
Sierra Nevada, sponsoring podcasts since never, and definitely never again. Oh my goodness.
First and last time.
Which microbrewery is going to be the next to not endorse us? Let's find out. Let's spin the wheel of beer and find out.